This time on Media City Inside the Industry, we take a deep look into graphic design and the anatomy of image. With thousands of images bombarding our lives every day conveying messages and promoting products, it's easy to forget that these designs have an actual artist, idea, and history behind them. What are the influences of quality design, and when does taking that influence go too far and reach appropriation? Then there are bigger questions. Can creativity be learned, or does learning hinder creativity? We sit down with two masters of design to answer questions about the history and hidden meanings of countless images, from movie posters and book covers to fine art and advertisements. Stephen Heller, Senior Art Director of the New York Times and co-chair of the MFA Designer as Author program at the School of Visual Arts. Mirko Illig, designer, illustrator, and former art director of Time International. And moderating the event is Christopher Mount, Director of Exhibitions and Public Programs for the Parsons New School of Design. Stick around to take a peek into this complex and multi-layered world, where revealed is so much more than what the eye can see. This is Media City Inside the Industry.
One of the things that we tried to do is show how certain classical pieces of art got integrated into contemporary design. And I'll just give you a little backstory on this. I'm not going to say much about the other pieces as we go along, just incidental things, and Mirko will join in. But this particular cover of Esquire was done by George Lois, who lives only a few blocks from here. And it's a takeoff on Saint Sebastian. Saint Sebastian is a Christian martyr. The idea that he had for this was to take that painting and contemporize it. So he was a friend of Muhammad Ali, and during the late 60s, Muhammad Ali had been stripped of his heavyweight title because he opposed the Vietnam War. It was a very political time. And George Lois, who worked basically alone on the covers of Esquire for 120 issues, worked only with the editor, Harold Hayes, and they would decide what goes into the magazine, or at least what would go on the cover that was in the magazine. And this was an unprecedented power that a designer, an art director had. And they decided that Muhammad Ali was the top story, and he brought his friend Muhammad Ali into the studio and said, well, I'm going to do this picture of you as Saint Sebastian. We're going to put arrows in you, and you're going to look just like this painting, and it's going to tell a great story, and it's going to be monumental icon in America. And Muhammad Ali said, wait a minute, I'm Muslim. That's a Christian saint. Can't do it. And Lois was nonplussed. He said, well, let me talk to Elijah Muhammad, who was the principal leader of the black Muslim movement in America. And they got on the phone, and Lois, being Lois, was very persuasive and convinced him that this would be a great thing. And Elijah Muhammad said, this is fine, and ergo, here is the cover. So we started with this image, and then we go to another image, which is using the same Saint Sebastian idea. It uses one of the actual paintings. It was painted many times by different artists, but in this case, it's for smokes. And then Mirko found other uses of this image. How many images did you go through to get to these things?
I don't know. It's a lot. I'm dyslexic. I cannot remember people's name, dates, and whatever, but I can remember almost every image I ever saw.
And this is true. It's frightening, really frightening. So he went through all of the Saint Sebastians, and I'm only showing you a few of them. And then we decided there's another theme that runs through design. When I said there were 5 or 6, there are definitely more than that. But one of the other themes that goes through graphic design is the X-ray. The X-ray is an amazing tool that was invented at the turn of the century, but at the same time, it's also a very graphic tool. So here, Mirko found this image, and how did you find this one?
In some magazine. I have a really strange system of remembering things. I remember images. Magazine was mostly white, was on first part of the magazine on top left corner. And then I go through my archive looking for mostly white magazine, and mostly white magazines then certain part of the office, and that's how I remember images. It's a really strange way to categorize, and it's really hard to help me too, because some of my employees, which are here, I will chase them. Mostly white magazine, look for mostly white magazine, and I'll be upset if somebody will misplace them.
So he found the X-ray. Mirko has also worked with X-ray images. In fact, he can see X-ray, all of you. There's nothing to hide. So he found that campaign. And then we go back. Then we started looking at what else represented the X-ray in graphic design. And one of the first X-ray images was this John Hartfield picture that was done in 1933 or 4. It was a satiric image against Hitler, obviously. Hitler eats gold and craps something
Garbage.
else. Garbage, exactly.
Spits
But
out.
also that's his spine.
And that becomes his spine. So there's the political aspect of it. So we see another strain. And then we go to something else, something more contemporary. This is a product for muscle enhancement. And it's a really clever use of the X-ray. And then he found this cover, which goes back to 1999, using the X-ray again in a fairly literal manner for the best doctors in New York. And then he goes into his mind works in miraculous ways. After you saw the X-ray, did you know this? Did you see this?
Yeah, that was actually on the street. As I was walking down and thinking about a project, that was on the street. That was contemporary poster that week.
And you can see what we're looking at. It's X-ray, but it's not an X-ray, right? So this is another strain in graphic design where human bodies take the form of physical objects. So here you have the skull, but it's made up of the bodies. And here you have an original. So it went back, actually, to the early days of photography around the turn of the century, when these kinds of things were not easily made because there was no Photoshop. And they were also very popular because they were special effects at a time when special effects really had a spectacular impact on the common eye. So we went from this to this, which was also a very well-known piece of art, where objects were manipulated through graphics, and so you could see both the narrative piece, the representational piece, and then you see the symbol. Now, we don't make value judgments here. We're not saying anybody stole anything, are we?
Yeah, sometimes. I think designers, they usually don't steal. Advertising usually steal.
So you mean the art director says, I want it this way? And
No, I think you see art directors in advertising, they're on much lower level of the pyramid. Somebody already have idea, brought them and told them do it. Art directors in, let's say, editorial, I think they're slightly higher and they have more input. For example, most dangerous thing for designer is to listen idea of editor. I had many cases when editor will come and tell, oh, I have this idea, can you create this for cover? Having knowledge of the past images, I will tell them. And usually it's in span of a year and a half. That was already the cover of Business Week then and then. What happened is they see something what they like, because the editor, all good ideas belong to them. They forget that was not originally their idea. And they come to you, oh, that is the idea. And most of the time when you do that, turn out you rip off somebody. And if you don't know, if you don't fight that, you get yourself a lot of time in trouble.
Picasso said that whoever copied him was stealing, but when he did it, it was inspiration. We found another motif that was repeated often, and that's the double head of Janus. In this case, it's a Roman coin. The futurists used that sensibility in creating this approximation of speed. This is the head of Mussolini, done in the early 30s, and quite a beautiful piece of work because it does really simulate the sense of motion which the futurists were so involved with. The Pet Boys used a similar thing. Pet Shop Boys. I think they made a dreidel out of it, but it's like a rapid prototyping version of it. And then I remember the day Mirko called me to tell me to take a look at Karim Rashad's cover. This, in a sense, was the impetus for the book. And then we also found mouths or rather frequently used, particularly that mirror back image of the mouth going back and back. And in this case, it's quite a powerful image. The abuse you yell at your kids stays in their family for generations. And it illustrates it beautifully. But again, it's not an idea that was unique to this poster. It started in ways using the mouth back in the 1920s with the Malak Verlag, which was the communist publisher and publisher of Dada books, in this case, Raoul Hausmann's book. And then Furious Pig. I'm sure you were overjoyed when you saw this one, which looks a lot like Notorious, except there's no food between the teeth, which looks a lot like this theater poster, which goes back to the mouth in the mouth, except, is that an eye?
No, it's mouth. It's totally mouth.
Totally mouth. And then we figured, you know, the mouth is an optical illusion, this mouth within a mouth. And we decided to look for more things that were optically illusional. And one of the most frequently used optical illusions is the hand holding a book within a book, or some other form, a poster or a business card. So Chip Kids is the most recent, but then Mirko joyfully found this one. And then this more primitive version of that. And this one is my favorite. This one actually, you know, when you talk about things that are inspired, when you take it from the original and go to the next level, that's what real inspiration is about. So then we decided to look at something else. This was one of our major pieces. This was done by Gail Anderson at Spotco for a Broadway musical that unfortunately didn't last too long, but the poster will last forever. And the idea is, of course, the trompe-l'oeil. Looking at an image on a surface, but that it's really totally a two-dimensional surface, giving the illusion of 3 dimensions. And one of the things Mirko found was this, because it has this illusion of depth. And of course, he had a special interest in the young lady's skirt, or tablecloth, as the case may be. And then we looked at collage elements, because designers, particularly designers of the late 20th century, loved photographing the ersatz designs that would appear on poster hoardings. All the ripped posters kind of gave way to new designs that weren't intended. And then we found where that original idea really came from. This is Stefan Sagmeister, who, when he cut himself, or had his intern cut himself with razor blades to get this typographic effect, which is really giving his body for his art, most people thought it was quite the original piece of work, and certainly very few other designers I know would carve themselves up. He assures me that he doesn't have any scars.
Especially when designer is not English-speaking person and his assistant is not English-speaking person, there is lots of possibilities for misspelling, you know, and it must be really interesting how you fix misspelling.
Didn't he say that he went to the beach a couple of years afterwards and it came back when he got a tan or something? He had when it turned red, yeah, and so it sort of came back 2 years later when he finally got to the beach.
And sign help started to appear on his arm.
And the typos came out, too. So Stefan has been drawing on the body. This is another one of his pieces. Some of you may have seen that poster for the new Jim Carrey movie, which presumably was taken from this, and a case of an advertising art director seeing something good. But this is a side of beef, a kind of misogynistic side of beef, but it fits into that same category. Here is self-cutting. Is there a word for self-cutting? Self-mutilation?
Yes, that's actually conceptual art. This is
that's what the word is. Philippe Starck. And then this one is more typographically pristine. And then those, some of you may remember the Dixie Chicks. Anyway, they came down on our poor president our poor misunderstood president, and so they got a nice cover out of Entertainment Weekly. But this is where it all comes from, really. So what we're trying to do is show the roots and show literally the roots, R-O-O-T-S, and the roots, R-O-U-T-E-S, where these designs come from.
Coming up, we take a look at the most overused ideas for movie posters and what Steven Heller says not to do when it comes to design.
I think there must be one designer every 30 minutes who uses an icon for a letter.
This is Media City, Inside the Industry.